Good evening. Welcome to the City Council chambers. In attendance, we have members of the committee. I'm Sharon Green Middleton, Chair of the committee and representing the 6th District and Vice President of the Council. To my immediate left, we have Vice Chairman of the committee, Leon Pinkett, representing the 7th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We also have to his left is Councilman Robert Stokes that represents the 12th District and member of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And also to his left, we have Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark of the 14th District.
Thank you.
And also, we have on our right-hand side, President of the Council, President Brandon Scott. And also to his right, we have a member of the committee, Councilman Edward Reisinger, that represents the 10th District. And to his right, we have Councilwoman Shannon Sneed, that represents the 13th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we also have two members representing the Office of the President, Michael Huber and Kimberly Rubens. And also we have representing the Mayor's Office, Jeff, sitting over here on my left, Jeff Amoros. This evening, the Taxation, Finance, and Economic Development Committee will have a hearing for Bill number 18-0307, Water Accountability and Equity Act, for the purpose of increasing the availability and affordability of basic water and wastewater service to low-income consumers and assuring a fair process for all consumers before the city exercises its authority to cut off water services, impose liens, and take similar action. This bill was introduced on December 3rd, 2018. This bill was sponsored by Mayor Young, but we do have President Brandon Scott for comments. But before I do that, I would like to recognize Senator Mary Washington that is also participating in this hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight for this important Taxation Committee hearing as we hear testimony on the Water Taxpayer Protection Act. I want to start by thanking our Mayor, Jack Young, for introducing this critical piece of legislation. I am so grateful for his leadership and work to ensure that everyone in our city has affordable access to water. I am proud to be a co-sponsor of this legislation along with every single member of this city council. This bill seeks to bring more accountability and equity to our water system, and this cannot come soon enough. Water is not only a human right, but also one of the most basic necessities of life. We all need water to survive, from drinking to cooking, to cleaning, to bathing, to gardening, to flushing the toilet. Access to water forms the foundation of everyday lives. Yet, we all know that families across our city struggle greatly to access affordable water and how to get answers when they have issues with their bills. Let me be clear. Water bills are the #1 complaint received by members of the Baltimore City Council. During my years on the council, the number of calls I receive have now gone through my mind, but constituents needing help with their water bills has been truly astronomical and is only rising as time goes on. I know many of my colleagues on the council have had the same experience, but my district office spent more time trying to help constituents with their water bills than anything else. Yes, even more than crime in Baltimore City. And this area of broad-based concern as it affects renters, homeowners, businesses, nonprofits, and anyone else who uses water in the city. It is unacceptable for anyone in our city to be priced out of water service or struggle to correct an erroneous bill. It's clear to me that our current water system needs serious work. The Water and Accountability and Equity Act will bring much of the needed change and will codify a new way of running our water system, a way that works for all Baltimoreans. It's time for income-based water billing for low-income families and an independent customer dispute process. I look forward to hearing the testimony of the experts, advocates, citizens of Baltimore, and the Department of Public Works as we now start the dialogue to make this bill, this very needed bill, work for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, and I also would like to recognize Councilman Eric Costello of the 11th District and also a member of this committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we can't say over and over again, we'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to discuss this important piece of legislation. To all the residents of Baltimore who have come out to have their voices heard, and to my fellow committee members and members of the council, we thank you all for your time and attention on this very important piece of legislation. For the format, we're going to first have, we have 2 panels or 3? We have 3 panels that we're going to hear from, and these are advocates that have worked hard on this legislation and have garnered our support, and we're going to hear from the panels first, and after the panels, if there is any additional testimony from individual citizens, we will listen to that, but we don't want to be repetitious and just repeating the same thing over again. We want to share and get all the information out there so DPW, Department of Public Works, can really listen. We also Department of Public Works also has in the other room, is that the Curran room? The Curran room, they have a couple tables set up just for if there is some individuals that testify this evening that need some particular guidance and help. They have assistance for that as well. So thank you, Department of Public Works, for setting that up, especially with the technical problems we're having right now with the city. So on that note, we're going to start with panel 1, and Senator Mary Washington is going to start that off, and basically the first panel is introducing the bill. So
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I speak from the May I speak from the podium? I have
Yes.
to leave immediately.
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
And that's all.
Oh, sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, other members of the Taxation, Finance, and Economic Development Committee. Thank you so much for holding this hearing on this crucial piece of water justice legislation. For the record, I am Mary Washington, Senator for the 43rd Legislative District, representing Baltimore City residents. I'm here tonight to express my strong support for Mayor Jack Young's Water Accountability and Equity Act and the urgent protections that it provides my neighbors and my constituents. Now that we've stopped one of the most inhumane collection practices, we must go further and tackle the ongoing affordability and accountability issues. For the last several years, I've supported the Baltimore Right to Water Coalition on water justice issues in the city. Through these efforts, as well as my constituent services, I've seen firsthand the need for greater accountability and transparency in the Department of Public Works. I want to set the stage tonight about why we need the City Council to pass the Water Accountability and Equity Act. Tonight, you'll hear from residents and businesses about the long-standing and persistent issues we have with our water billing system. From my work at the state legislature and through I can assure you that these issues are not new. They are becoming worse. As council members, you know this, as the council president just noted. While the director may tout DPW's new programs like Water Assist, these programs are too little too late. More, the department's response is reactionary. It's not innovative nor customer-oriented. For years, ratepayers have waited for the director and the department to be proactive. And what we've learned is that we simply cannot trust the existing management structure to fix the broken water billing system on their own. Acting in the public interest, you have no choice but to impose legislative mandates, like those contained in the bill before you. This year, I sponsored the state, and the state was successful in passing the Water Taxpayer Protection Act to remove water bills from tax sales in Baltimore City. And I want to thank the council members for your resolution to that effect and your unanimous support of that legislation. Thanks to our joint efforts, no home and no place of worship in our city will face tax sale because of an unaffordable or incorrect water bill ever again. This is a historic and much-awaited victory. However, there is still work to be done. Much like how this policy change requires state legislation, the ongoing issues with unaffordable service and erroneous billing that still occurs requires action by the City Council. So please pass the Water Accountability and Equity Act. And this is why. A well-run water department maintains data to assess their financial health, and they know if they're meeting their revenue requirements. For many years now, I and others have filed records of requests for records to the department seeking information about water billing data, disconnections, arrearages, and other standard financial metrics that would allow us to assess the vulnerability of residents and ongoing rate increases. To date, we've been unable to obtain or review or assess this vital data. But this is just one example of the department stymieing efforts to obtain information. The bill before you this evening will help fix this alarming lack of transparency. It will create a customer's advocate's office, and this office would be overseen by a new committee for oversight. Residents and businesses would have a clear legal process to dispute the accuracy of their water bills. There will be deadlines, written records, and clearly defined appeals process. And more, this office would need to report at least twice a year to the new oversight committee that is governed by this council. It would provide data about its investigations and its customers' complaints. The office will recommend changes to the department to enhance and improve transparency and accountability of its billing procedures. The Water Accountability Equity Act will improve the Department of Public Works. It will help restore some public confidence in our water billing system after many, many years of problems. I urge you to support this legislation as drafted. Thank you for all you do for the residents of Baltimore City, for being good partners in this fight to ensure that water remains a safe, accessible, and affordable resource for all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Senator Washington at this time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And as we proceed, our panels are divided into pieces. We're going to have 3 more people that will be testifying as far as the introduction of the bill, and then the next section will be people testifying from the panel on the actual problem, and then we'll have, if there's any questions from the committee or council members, we'll entertain those questions, and then we'll start taking testimony from the general public. And I also want to mention, if anyone's standing in the back, there's lots of seats on the second floor of the chambers as well, if you'd like to sit up there. Next person, and you can stay right at your desks and use the microphone there if you'd like. Mary Grant.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Chair Middleton, Vice Chair Pinkett, and the members of the committee for holding this hearing. And thank you to the Council President Scott for your remarks. I'm Mary Grant, the Public Water for All Campaign Director at Food and Water Watch. I want to begin by saying, on behalf of Food and Water Watch and our more than 6,000 supporters in Baltimore City, I urge you to support the Mayor's Water Accountability and Equity Act and to reject any amendment to weaken this legislation. I also want to thank Senator Washington for setting the stage and explaining why the City Council must legislate changes that we need to see to our water billing system. We simply cannot trust Director Chow's DPW to address community concerns, and we cannot trust that he will not take away the new programs that are being created right now in response to this legislation. We saw this when the department unilaterally took away the informal conferences without creating an alternative. So for an overview of the panels, tonight you'll hear from 3 panels, as the chairwoman said. On the first panel, we want to provide an overview of the legislation, details of how it'll work. And we are also happy to answer your questions, committee members, that you have about the technical aspects of the bill. On the next panel, you'll hear personal stories and case studies about the ongoing, persistent problems with our water billing system and the urgent need for you to pass this ordinance. And on the final panel, you'll hear from 2 financial experts who will explain the fiscal impact of the legislation and offer best practices for implementing utility affordability programs. The Water Accountability and Equity Act is a comprehensive piece of legislation that will fix our broken water billing system. It will create 2 new programs, the Water for All Affordability Program and the Office of the Water Customer Advocacy and Appeals. The affordability program will provide credits to cap water bills of low-income households at a level they can afford to pay based on their income. The customer advocate will provide a fair, neutral, and accountable process for all customers to resolve their water billing problems. I will explain how the Water Affordability Program will work. But first, I want to start with a definition. What is water affordability? According to the United Nations, for water service to be affordable, bills should not exceed 3% of a household's income. Using that international standard, this new affordability program would cap a household's total annual water and sewer bill at 3% of the household's income. It is important to note that affordability is defined as a percentage of a household's income. If the city does not look at how much water bills are consuming household income, then it is not addressing our growing water affordability crisis. This is a major failing of DPW's newly rebranded H2O Assist program. DPW's H2O Assist program is inadequate for several reasons, but a key reason is that it fails to ensure that water bills are affordable for households. It does not consider how much of their income residents are spending on water bills. Instead, it will give all low-income households the same 43% discount off of their usage charges. This discount doesn't even apply to the whole bill. It doesn't apply to fixed infrastructure charges or the account fee. That matters because fixed fees are the most regressive part of a water bill. And in future rate hikes, DPW can just increase those fixed charges that won't be affected by the discount. DPW has proposed a deceptive solution. The City Council's support for the Water for All program would ensure that water bills are affordable for households now and into the future. It will award credits that match the needs of the low-income households. More importantly, unlike DPW's H2O Assist, the Water for All program will address the existing water debt of low-income households and provide a pathway for renters to access assistance. So who is eligible for the Water for All program? All households in the city at or below 200% of the federal poverty line. That's both homeowners and renters. Unlike DPW's H2O Assist program, the Water for All program will allow renters to receive assistance without their landlord being there. What is the application process? The application process will be more accessible for households. They will be able to apply online, in person, or by mail. Currently, households have to go in person to one of 5 community action centers in Baltimore to apply for the H2O Assist program. This is a major barrier for many folks working 9 to 5 or with mobility difficulties. The new Water for All program, DPW will be required to streamline the application process for people enrolled in state programs with similar income requirements. Households enrolled in the Water for All program will get an annual credit on their water bill, dispersed in monthly increments, to offset the unaffordable portion of their bill. The credit reduces the water and sewer bill to a level that the household can afford to pay based on their income and the affordability threshold. A household's annual water bill is calculated using the approved rate schedules that the Board of Estimate has already approved and the household's previous annual water usage. The household income is determined the same way that the electric assistance program determines income, and the affordability threshold is on a sliding scale from 1 to 3%. The math is actually pretty simple. It's a basic arithmetic. The credit is the difference between the bill and the affordable bill, so it reduces the bill down to the level that is affordable. The affordable bill is determined by the household income times the affordability threshold on that sliding scale. For example, Consider a typical low-income senior living at 75% of the federal poverty level. Their regular water and sewer bill, effective this July, will be about $550 a year. With the new Water for All program, their water bill will be reduced to 2% of their income, giving them a credit of $359 a year. Here's another way to view that example. As you can see, the annual Water for All bill will be about $187 a year, while the DPW senior discount, which has been recently rebranded as the H2O Assist program, will be about $433 a year. But the total savings from the regular bill will be about $359 a year. Here's another example. Consider a mom with 2 kids. She's working full-time. 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year at minimum wage. Right now, that's $10.10 in the city, $10.10 an hour in the city. She's living right at the federal poverty line. She rents her house, so she can't get any assistance from DPW right now. But if you pass this ordinance, her bills too will be affordable. Her water bills would be capped at 2% of her income, dropping it from more than $1,000 a year to about $425 a year, something she can afford to pay based on her income. Another major benefit offered by the Mayor's Water Accountability and Equity Act is how it manages existing water debt. Unlike with DPW's H2O Assist program, when a household is enrolled in the Water for All program, they will not have to pay extra on an installment plan on their past due amounts. So in addition, each on-time payment of their new affordable bill will also count towards repayment of their water debt. This will provide a pathway out of water debt. So for an example, please refer to the testimony of Ms. Brown in your packets. Ms. Brown is a former city school employee who is injured on the job and survives on her disability payments of less than $1,000 a month. Through her struggles, she fell behind on her water bills and at one point owed more than $1,500 on her bills. She was able to enter into a payment plan, but her total monthly bill, plus these catch-up charges, totaled $300 a month. That's 30% of her income. The debt is a major barrier to affordable service. A discount on her bills won't help with that existing debt. With the Water for All affordability program, her monthly bill would be 2% of her income. That's $20 a month, nothing more. That's real affordability. This is the solution that Baltimore needs. I'm now going to turn it over to Komal to discuss the new Office of the Customer Advocate.
So you're Kamal?
Komal, yes.
Yes, go. Introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Chair Middleton and members of the committee. My name is Komal Vaidya, and I teach at the University of Baltimore School of Law in the Community Development Clinic. Our students represent nonprofits, small businesses, and other community enterprises in the city. And we've been involved with the Baltimore Right to Water Coalition for the past 4 years. We've been working with Food and Water Watch and other pro bono legal organizations and have experienced firsthand through representation of clients and through the experience of the clients of our partners of what residents in the city are experiencing and what water challenges they're facing. I'm here to tell you about the Office of the Water Customer Advocacy and Appeals. And as an overview, the objective of this office is to establish transparent and consistent procedures to handle water billing disputes and program eligibility concerns and issues that water customers are facing. The Water of the Customer Advocate also will be promoting customer fairness and long-term problem solving and operate independently from the Department of Public Works and accountable to the public. So I do want to take a step back and provide you with a bit of context. As we've been hearing from Council President Scott and what you'll hear from members of the public tonight, it's no secret that Baltimore City residents experience excessive, exorbitant, and erroneous water bills. They report having to navigate unclear and confusing procedures that are inconsistent, and they report that when they apply for programs, their paperwork is lost and their payments are being misapplied. And more often than not, when they dispute their high water bills, they're told that their water bills are high because there's a leak on their property. DPW's current dispute resolution system is oriented around a presumption that people are receiving high water bills because they have a leak on their property. But this is inaccurate. We know from widespread media coverage that people are receiving high water bills possibly because there's a software issue or because there's an incorrect or unreliable meter reading and other issues such as leaks on city property. But regardless, the burden of the current system places an expensive and unfair expense on customers to prove that there isn't a leak on their property, and it's not addressing the root of the problem. I want to walk you through what DPW's current dispute resolution system looks like from the viewpoint of a customer. They first have to start with an internal and informal water review process, where more often than not, they're told after a turn-off test and a bench test that the reason why their water bills are high is because they have a leak. If they want to challenge this, they must pay for, more often than not, they incur more costs by paying for a bench test and having to pay meter fees. After that, once DPW establishes that there's a leak on the property, the customer has a recourse through a water and sewer adjustment in which they must prove that the leak on their property was repaired. Even then, the adjustment is nominal, and they can get relief only once every 2 to 3 years. But after this process, despite plumbers saying that there are no leaks on their property, as you'll hear from members of the public, or plumbers certifying that the leak has been repaired, they continue to receive high water bills, in which their final recourse is an internal management escalation, in which DPW will review the clarity of the communications between the department and customer service representatives and the customer, but they are not reviewing the actual accuracy or the accounting of the bill. What we're proposing is something different. We're proposing a new office that operates completely independent from the Department of Public Works, that's neutral, and where the customer has a shot at really understanding why their water bill is high and fixing that and getting a fair shot at an adjustment. So the first step would be a problem-solving investigation handled by the customer advocate. Here, the customer advocate can, under the proposed ordinance, can investigate other sources of high bills beyond interior leaks. They can look at computational errors, they can investigate leaks into city property, they can look at accounting, and also program denials and eligibility concerns. The customer advocate also is charged with granting relief, and they must issue a written report. So it's resolving that problem of the lack of transparency in record keeping. If the customer then isn't satisfied with that relief, then they have they can proceed and request an in-person hearing before a separate and impartial hearing officer. And in this stage of the process, the customer advocate can appear. And the customer also has the opportunity to present their own evidence and rebut evidence. And this procedure is consistent with due process proceedings that we've seen in other jurisdictions. And like the problem-solving investigator, the appeals officer can grant relief and must issue a written report. Finally, if the customer under this process also has the right to judicial review, and so they can appeal these findings to circuit court and through other judicial avenues. Even though this office is neutral and independent, we're also finding that it's of crucial importance that there's independent oversight over water billing disputes in the city. And so the Office of the Customer Advocate would also report to the Committee of Office Oversight, which is comprised of 7 members. 4 of those 7 members would be council members. And members of the public would be invited to those meetings and could also testify. The purpose of these meetings are to improve the water billing system and the dispute resolution process. And the office administrator of the customer advocate would also issue a report at these meetings that are focused on promoting customer fairness. And so in sum, what we're proposing is that we move away from this old system that is handled internally by the Department of Public Works, where there's a focus on leaks as the source of high water bills that's inconsistent and informal, to a new system that operates independent and outside of the Department of Department of Public Works engages in comprehensive problem solving that goes beyond leaks and looks at why water bills are actually so high, promoting fairness to the customer. This new system would also follow established and consistent procedures and produce a written record. And finally, it would be independent. It would be accountable to the public and be subject to the oversight of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next person on the panel, Zafar? Did I say your-
Zafar Shah. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Council President, members of the committee. I'm an attorney at the Public Justice Center, which is a nonprofit civil legal aid organization based here in Baltimore City, and we serve approximately 600 to 700 Baltimore City renters each year, providing them legal assistance, typically in eviction proceedings and cases dealing with substandard housing. We support this bill because more than half of Baltimore City renters are housing cost burdened, and continually rising water rates only worsen that burden. Most renters are contractually obligated by their lease to pay water and sewer charges as well as infrastructure account and environmental fees to the Department of Public Works or as reimbursement to a landlord who has already paid to the DPW. But these renters, and again, this is the 53% of the city, they are excluded from account services and dispute resolution processes under the current schemes of DPW and in prior schemes. In effect, renters have been and continue to be a second class of water paying customers. And this second class status profoundly disrupts the economics, the household economics of renters and the prospect of housing stability in the city. Now, I'm not going to go into all the problems that my clients see and that I've even heard from landlords, because we're going to talk about those problems in the rest of the panel and from the public. I want to focus on the solutions presented in this bill, and there's 3 key areas of protection that this bill offers that are specific to the problem of renters as second-class customers. So the first area of protection is that this bill is a breakthrough. It redefines customer and defines customer inclusively to include both property owners and tenants. So once tenants are defined as customers, this bill opens the door widely for tenants to have the benefit of all the protections Como and Mary talked to you about in this panel. So the bill revises residential lease requirements in the city code in the housing article so that whenever a landlord requires the tenant to pay water and sewer charges, the landlord first must use a written lease, and that written lease itself establishes authorization for DPW to provide directly to tenants all account services. So the lease itself provides that authorization rather than having landlords have to step in and advocate for tenants, or tenants having to contact DPW and go through some kind of runaround to get access to records. This bill also requires that landlords timely provide the water and sewer bill to the tenant, or timely notify the Department of Public Works that the bill should be delivered directly to the tenant. The intended effect of these provisions of the WEA is to remove impediments when a tenant is attempting to obtain information about billing and consumption, and to include the tenant customer by definition in all aspects of both the affordability program and the due process mechanisms in this bill. Secondly, tenant customers will be able to directly and take the initiative to become part of the Water for All program. The WEAA provides direct access for tenants to this new scheme. The current assistance programs do not provide direct access. For example, DPW's low-income water assistance eligibility criteria require the applicant to be the account holder. Tenants are not considered currently in regs or in statute to be the account holder. In contrast, the hardship exemption program at DPW and the payment plan programs do allow customers to pay. So in terms of equity, we see that that there are steps at DPW for tenants to directly pay and have assistance in paying, but they can't on their own get a discount or some other type of credit or benefit to lower the amount they pay. The scheme presented in our bill provides a credit to all tenant customers, whether they are billed at a single meter or billed by allocation from a master meter. So tenant customers who live in a master metered multi-family building will benefit to the same extent that tenant customers do when they live in a single metered dwelling, for example, a row house. The method of granting the credit is different, and so the bill details exactly how a credit would work when there's a single meter versus a master meter, and I can go into more detail of that in Q&A. Under the WEA, this bill, rent sharing tenants, so the co-lessees who are sharing rent and are part of one household, those are defined as a single household for eligibility purposes in the Water for All program. So they are a single customer even though they are a group of tenants. Thirdly, and very importantly, so that by changing the definition of customer, all tenants are included in all facets of dispute resolution, including appeals, and then including protections from shutoffs. And tenant customers are able to initiate bill disputes. They are able to initiate appeals without permission from landlords and without the participation of the landlord. One of the ramifications of this is to protect tenants from displacement through eviction. Inclusive dispute resolution under this bill provides tenant customers protection in district court actions to evict or to collect. This is principally accomplished by first establishing in the bill that disputed or appealed bills are not to be considered unpaid or in arrears. And then secondly, by requiring DPW to request that the sheriff's office stay enforcement of any court judgment that arose from the disputed or appealed bill. And the intended effect of these provisions in the bill is to ensure that water sewer bill disputes, which can be lengthy and can be complicated, are handled at the administrative level before they become the subject of eviction and debt collection, which are speedy proceedings and highly punitive to the tenant. So the bill is comprehensive, is a comprehensive solution. It makes water accessible for all, and it provides a significant step towards stabilizing renting families that are important to our communities across the city. So Public Justice Center asks for your favorable report.
Thank you for your testimony. And before we move to panel 2, I'd like to recognize Councilman Christopher Burnett of the 8th District, which has joined us at my far left. And panel 2, we want to start with Kimberly Armstrong. Can you use that mic? Yes. Introduce yourself. It lifts right up. Yes.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for hearing my testimony, Chairman Middle and committee. My name is Kimberly Armstrong, and I'm a longtime resident of Baltimore City. You have my testimony right here, so I'm just going to summarize. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to just summarize it.
That's fine.
My name is Kimberly Armstrong. I'm born and raised resident in Baltimore City and a 23-year resident of Bel Air Edison neighborhood. I bought my home in 1996 when I was 26 years old. And I have raised 3 children there, also taken care of 7 members of my family, a sick father for about 10 years. And I've been an active contributor to Baltimore City around social justice issues and a big advocate. My issue with the water bill really started in 2014, but it escalated back in 2016 when I received a water bill for $1,414.64. And I know the exact amount because I still have the bill. And I knew this was wrong because at the time my daughter was at the Seed School of Maryland, and I was the only person in the house. And at the time, I was a full-time student at Baltimore City Community College, also working full-time. So if anyone knows, the Seed School of Maryland is a boarding school. So she's at school all week. She didn't come home until on Fridays. So the most water we ever used was either to take a shower or to wash clothes. So when I got this water bill for $1,400, I was like, something is not right. So at that time, I called my councilman, which was Warren Branch. And it took me a while to get an in-person hearing, so that's why I got in contact with him. His agency or someone in his office got me in contact with DPW. And this person's name was India Murray. Ms. Murray instructed me to all the steps I had to take before I got an in-person hearing, which I had to get a certified plumber to come out, make sure I didn't have any leaks under my house or any kind of major leaks in my house to give me a $1,400 water bill. Did all the steps, brought all the information to the hearing, showed it to the person. There was also another young lady who was sitting there looking at the computer, looking at my address to tell the meter of the water running or whatever it was that she was doing. And the only leak that they found in my home was a very minor leak that was in a toilet in my basement. And I got that fixed for $200, and probably they just charged me something because they came out to my house, and it was about making money too. However, then back in 2016 again, I happened to see someone outside of my home looking at my water meter because it's right in front of my house. So I went outside and I asked her what was she doing because I thought she was there to turn my water off. And she said, no, I'm just looking at your meter. So she pulls the meter out of the ground and she shows it to me. And what she shows me is that my meter was not even working. Yes. She said, this is, because my meter and my next door neighbor's meter were connected. She said, this is your meter and this is her meter. Her meter was steady ticking. My meter was saying 0, 0, 0. And this is after they put in the new meter. This was the new meter, not the old meter. So when I asked for any kind of, after my in-person hearing, I never heard anything back from anyone. So I decided to once again take it upon myself, call DPW, and ask what happened to my in-person hearing. Never got a word. Never got anything from anybody. I've come to city council hearings around this issue. I've also been out into community when DPW was in the community doing things around helping people to keep their houses out of tax sale for the water bill. My house went into tax sale not once, but twice. And because a tax sale supersedes a mortgage, my mortgage company paid to get my house out of tax sale. So at this time, that money goes into my escrow. So now I have an escrow. So my escrow went up to about $4,000. When I bought my home, my mortgage is $350. I got my home refinanced when all the housing crisis thing happened. So I was only paying $350. Now my mortgage is $700 and some dollars. I happen to be fortunate enough where I can pay the extra $300, but this extra $300 in the escrow is because the inflated and erroneous water bills that I have not gotten corrected since 2016, and now here it is 2019, and I still have no recourse. Because then when the new administration came in, they took out the in-person hearing, and you can only get your water bill adjusted for 2 billing cycles. So what is that going to do for me as a homeowner and a longtime resident and a community advocate of Baltimore City? What is that going to do for me? It's not going to decrease my mortgage, and I have no recourse still. So I encourage you to pass this legislation because it's not just me. It's what about the people who can't speak? What about elderly people who may not be computer savvy? What about people who live on a fixed income? So you cannot be a city that say that you are trying to decrease homelessness when you're increasing homelessness. So I think it's also a dereliction of the council person and the city of Baltimore and all these agencies. It's a dereliction of duty. That's exactly what it is. So you can't say you're for the people, and when the people hire you to do a job, do a position, just like I get hired to go to work and do something, and my bosses expect something from me. And I think, and the reason why I have a $5,000 water bill right now. And I'm gonna tell you what, I refuse to give DPW any of my money because it's like I'm paying somebody to rob me. I might as well go outside and hold my pocketbook up and say, here, take it. And then go to the ATM machine and give them the code to take all the money out of the bank. So I ask and I urge you, because this is not just about me. This is the reason why I come and testify and help try to push legislation, because this thing is not about me. It's about the people that can't speak, the people that can't come to a hearing, the people that have probably been fighting this longer than me. So I want to thank you for hearing my testimony, and I encourage you to pass this legislation.
Thank you. We hear your testimony loud and clear. Thank you. Amy Hennon.
Thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Amy Hennon. I am both a city resident and the managing attorney for housing and consumer law at the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service. My organization is the oldest and largest provider of pro bono legal services to low-income Marylanders. And about 29% of the cases that we serve every year are housing and consumer related. In addition to the individual representation we do, my organization also works with the Pro Bono Resource Center of Maryland to provide tax sale clinics every year. A vast proportion of the clients that we see at those tax sale clinics also have water bill disputes. And every year when we hold these tax sale clinics, I have clients who are crying in front of me about their unaffordable bills, about what they're going to do in order to be able to stay in their homes. And my office does work with DPW in order to resolve billing disputes and resolve issues for our clients, and we appreciate them working with us on that. However, I want to highlight in particular two of our clients who have continue to have issues that, in spite of DPW working with us on their matters. I have one client who initially she received a $50,000 water bill. And after working with someone in my office, it became a $30,000 water bill, and then eventually became a $10,000 water bill. She is on Social Security. She's in her 80s, and every month she pays $200 to the Department of Public Works. Every month she is making decisions in order to repay, that bill that are impacting other choices that she could and should be making with that $200 every month in order to be able to repay that bill, because it's important to her to pay the department. The other client that I want to mention has not ever had a large water bill that came up, but she has a monthly high water bill. She lives in Rosemont. She is 92 years old, and her monthly water bill is $200. Her Social Security income is just over $900. So this is a really large chunk of her income, and she has had plumbers out to her house twice to certify that she doesn't have any leaks, but still her bill is $200 a month. It's just her. It doesn't make any sense to me why her bill's that high. It doesn't make any sense to her. It doesn't make any sense to the plumbers who've been out to her home. I would urge this committee to vote favorably on this bill and resist any weakening amendments. This is really important for my clients and really important for the city. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify to you today.
Thank you. Reverend Alvin Gwynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm here in support of this bill that it can get passed as quick as it can. I thank you for the opportunity to testify before your committee. My name is Reverend Alvin Gwynn. I'm the president of the IMA, Interdenominational Minister Alliance of Baltimore. I am here today to show the support of the IMA for the Water Accountability and Equity Act and to share my personal struggle with water bills, which almost cost me my church. I think I have a written testimony. I'm going to pass that up to you so you can have it for the record so it won't belay the time. Yes. But there are a couple things I want to point out. In 2014, $6 million was given to Department of Public Works to correct the water billing system. And then in 2016, another $8 million was given to them for the same thing. My question is, they got $14 million. Why isn't the system correct? Why is the computers correct? And if so, where's the money right now? Where's the $14 million? Who is the company that's working on these computers? To this day, I don't know who they are. And I'm really upset about this, about where we're going. 3 weeks ago, I had the city come out to check for leaks in my church. There were no leaks. What I've done, because I'm frustrated with them, I took the liberty to install a water meter myself, a plumber to install a water meter at my church, inside the church, so I could read the meters for myself exactly how much water I've been using. Up to this date, I've been using 200-some gallons of water per day. They've been billing me for 700, 800, 900 gallons of water per day. So I placed an attorney, gave him a retainer, and I'm going to sue Baltimore City for the 2/3 of overbillings that they've given this church since 2014 up to this present moment, 2019. That's all I have to say, and I urge that you pass this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Darnetta Young. Darnetta.
Donetta. Donetta.
Thank you.
Chairwoman Middleton, Vice Chair Pickett, and members of the Taxation, Finance, and Economic Development Committee. I'm in support of the new water bill. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share my story with you this evening. My husband and I are homeowners in Councilman Pickett's District 7. We bought our house in October 2012. Ever since the switch to monthly billing, our water bills have been roughly $75 a month. Even when our water tank broke and there was a leak, the bills were never more than $200 per month. We had previously had issues with a leaking toilet and a leaking pipe, but we fixed both. And then in January 2019, we got a water bill for more than $4,000 for 1 month. We were billed for nearly 113 gallons of water. On our bill, it said that in the same billing period the year before, we had used under 3,000 gallons in the month. This means we were billed for more than 37 times the amount of usage for the previous year. We haven't done any new plumbing work and didn't hear or see signs of any leaks. We called the Department of Public Works, and they suggested that we do a turn-off test. We shut the main water valve off our house for an hour, and someone at DPW analyzed our meter reading remotely. While we waited for the results of the test, the customer service agent told me not to enter into a payment plan yet because the bill could be an error on their end, and we could probably get the bill adjusted. They said if we enter the payment plan, we'll be responsible for paying the full $4,000. She told me repeatedly to pay as much as we could every month. However, later we became worried about the house going up for tax sale over the outstanding bill, so my husband went and talked to someone else at DPW. This time they suggested we do enter the payment plan. The customer service representative said that our options were either to pay half of our outstanding debt immediately and the rest over the year, or we could pay the entire balance in installments over the next 6 months. DBW never called us with the results of the turn-off test. Had to call them to figure out what the results was, and the person at DPW said the meter was still registering usage when they did the remote test when we called back. So they recommended that, so they sent someone out, and they said that we should consider getting a plumber because they think it was underground. So we got a plumber. The plumber said everything was fine, nothing was going on. And I've been out of work for health reasons, in and out, and tending to my mother who had stage 3 cancer. And my husband was not able to drive because of health reasons at the time, so it was just relying on his disability check when I was not able to work. So I'm here today to see if we can get assistance without jeopardizing losing our house.
Thank you. Thank you for your important testimony as well. Karen Wabiki?
Is it okay if I stand? 'Cause
Yes,
the
you can.
podium sort of cuts off my line of view.
Introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name's Karen Wabeck. I'm both a resident of Baltimore City and a senior attorney with the Homeless Persons Representation Project. At HPRP, we represent tenants living in subsidized housing in Baltimore City who are facing the threat of homelessness due to eviction or termination of their housing subsidy. And as part of this work, we staff the so-called Section 8 docket in Baltimore City Rent Court every Thursday morning. We're down there offering day of and extended representation to tenants who have subsidized housing, whose landlord is in the process of trying to evict them for allegedly unpaid rent. And what we've seen over the last year is a drastic uptick in the number of tenants who are engaging with the court system, not because of unpaid rent, but because of an unpaid water bill. And it is clogging up an already overburdened rent court system here in Baltimore City. And our clients tell us different versions of the same story. Their water bills are unaffordable, they have questions about water charges, or they need to dispute the charges, but DPW will not engage with them because they are not the account holder. They can't access financial resources or programs to assist with paying off their water bill for the same reason. HPRP supports the Water Accountability and Equity Act because it will provide important protections to renters who face dispossession of their homes due to unaffordable or disputed water bills. And we've submitted written testimony that tells several stories from our clients that speak to the inadequacies of DPW's assistance programs, the inequities in the way that renters are treated by DPW, and the need for accountability and oversight and a neutral body outside of DPW to hear disputes. But this evening I want to tell you one story, and we'll call this client Tommy. Tommy came to HPRP facing eviction and termination of his Section 8 voucher due to an unpaid water bill. Tommy lived alone, and in just 2 years in the property, he had been billed over $2,100 by DPW. He'd fallen behind on the water bill because his income was $185 a month in Temporary Disability Assistance Program, or TDAP, benefits. And it's a simple math equation. He couldn't stretch the money far enough to pay his gas and electric bill, his water bill, his bus pass, and other core, essential, basic life necessities. The house where Tommy was living ended up on the tax sale list due to the unpaid water bill. Tommy suspected that there were leaks in the property that were causing the high bills, but he encountered one obstacle after another trying to remedy the situation. His landlord would not, for whatever reason, dispute the charges on his behalf with DPW. And Tommy attempted to dispute the charges directly with DPW and was told, no, you're not the account holder, only the account holder can dispute the charges. So HPRP assisted Tommy in contacting DPW to explore what options were available to him to get out from under this water bill. But the initial payment plans that DPW offered up were wholly unaffordable on an income of $185 a month. So we assisted Tommy in submitting a hardship exemption application to DPW. We sent it off. And I tried for 3 weeks to reach someone at DPW to follow up on the status of that application. Because remember, the property's on the tax sale list, the clock is ticking. We couldn't get a hold of anyone by the phone. So Tommy and I went down to DPW together, and we waited an hour and a half to speak with a customer service representative. When we finally spoke with the staff person, she told me there was no record of Tommy's application for the hardship exemption. Luckily, I'd brought his file along, so I got it out, and she made a copy and started looking it over. But it pretty quickly became clear that even if his application was granted, he still couldn't pay what would have been required. In my nearly 8 years at HPRP representing tenants in Baltimore City, I have never had a client actually receive assistance financially from DPW. Tommy's the one who got the closest. And it's because we sat in that office for an hour and a half. But it still wasn't enough. It was only through a miracle, truly, and assistance from the Detroit Water Project, which is now called the Human Utility, that Tommy's bill got paid. The house was removed from tax sale, and Tommy wasn't evicted. Had the Water Accountability and Equity Act been in effect at that time, Tommy could have accessed assistance from the Water for All affordability program as a tenant, and had his dispute heard by the Office of the Water Customer Advocacy and Appeals prior to things escalating to the point that they were. To put this in even finer perspective, I want you to know that HPRP had initially met Tommy 2 years prior when he was displaced by the city of Baltimore from the homeless encampment, not too far from here. And he was given a voucher by the city. And just 2 years later, he was back in my office, facing the very real prospect of returning to the streets. And it still gets to me to see the effect that that had on him. So we can do better. We have to do better. The Water Accountability and Equity Act is the way, and the time is now. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a note to the committee and council members that 52%, I was told, of Baltimore City residents are renters. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Next person, Roger Colton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Roger Colton. I am a principal in the firm of Fisher, Sheehan, and Colton, Public Finance and General Economics. I'm the Colton of Fisher, Sheehan, and Colton. I'm located in Boston, home of the 2018 World Champion Boston Red Sox. Over the past 40 years, I have worked to help develop, implement, and evaluate bill affordability programs for natural gas, electricity, and water utilities. I've worked in 35 states and in 5 Canadian provinces, and I want to thank you again for allowing me to come to Baltimore. I want to talk about 2 particular issues today, or aspects of this from the numbers perspective. When one often when one hears the term low-income assistance for utility bills, people immediately jump to the notion that, well, if it's a low-income program, it must be a social service program. And I would like to suggest to you today that there is unquestionably, as we just heard, I can't do better than that, that there's a social aspect to this, but I want to suggest to you today that there's also a business aspect to the legislation which you're being asked to consider and to approve. The fact is that when people can't afford to pay, it's not only a social service program, it's a collections problem. If somebody can afford to pay a $40 bill, you can send them a $100 bill all you want, but you're not going to get $100. If people can afford only to pay $40, even if you send them a disconnect notice, even if you disconnect their service, that doesn't increase their ability to pay. When there is a collection problem, that poses a problem to the utility as a utility. We ask for data from Baltimore's DPW, and as you heard from Senator Washington, we didn't receive that data, but let me give you some information from Baltimore Gas and Electric, which obviously serves the same community. Baltimore Gas and Electric divides in a report to the Maryland Public Service Commission its customers into MEEP-eligible customers, so customers eligible for federal fuel assistance, and non-MEEP-eligible customers. In its most recent report, BG&E reported that 59% of its low-income customers were in arrears. 59% compared to 20% of its non-low-income customers. And it's not only the incidence of arrearages, but it's the depth of arrearages as well. Baltimore Gas and Electric reported that of those 59% of its low-income customers that were in arrears, those customers owed $1,041 compared to people who, non-low-income customers in arrears, who owed only $441. So that is a particular problem when you are a community such as Baltimore that has, depending on one's perspective, either agreed to spend $3 billion or been directed to spend $3 billion on environmental compliance costs. As a community with those sorts of financial obligations, the DPW and the city needs to know that when it sends a bill, it will be able to collect the revenue that's associated with that bill. And the issue isn't hypothetical. I did a study in 2018 for Food and Water Watch, And what I found in that study was that with DPW's current and projected bills, so given what DPW was projecting as their bill increases, by 2019, the city of Baltimore, in 173 of 198 census tracts, on average, DPW's water and wastewater bills would be unaffordable to people with incomes at or below 100% of the federal poverty level. 173 out of 198. By 2020, the numbers were 189 out of 198 census tracts would on average have unaffordable water and wastewater bills for households at or below 100% of poverty. By 2022, 196 of the 198 census tracts in Baltimore on average would have unaffordable water and wastewater bills. And that poses a problem. That's a business problem. By not adopting this legislation, or by adopting this legislation, you will address not only the underlying social problem, but you will address the underlying business problem as well. It's one reason why the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which I can tell you from experience has no interest in poverty alleviation. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, in advice to communities, stated that it not only supports low-income rates, but that it strongly encourages low-income rates. In a memo to the regional directors or the regional administrators, EPA said, quote, EPA strongly encourages municipalities to consider establishing lower rates or subsidies for low-income customers. The EPA continues to encourage communities to consider and adopt rate structures that ensure that lower income households continue to be able to afford vital wastewater services. And again, the reason that EPA is interested is because they want to make sure that the cities and communities can collect the money in order to engage in the environmental compliance that's necessary. The second issue I wanted to talk about briefly is that adopting an income-based rate is far superior to adopting an across-the-board discount rate. An income-based rate, which is, as has been proposed in this legislation, gives enough assistance to customers to make their bills affordable, but only enough assistance to make their bills affordable. If bills are affordable without assistance, people don't receive any assistance, and if people have a lower need, they receive lesser assistance. Consider, for example, that under an across-the-board discount, which is what DPW is proposing, a person of income with income of $20,000 and a bill of $300 gets the exact same discount that a person that would have an income of $5,000 and a bill of $1,000. And if you think about that, what you're doing is there are times that you may be giving $900 in assistance to somebody who only needs $400 to make their bills affordable, and there are other times that you're giving $100 of assistance to somebody who needs, in reality, $500 in assistance. And either way, you're inefficiently spending money. You're not going to achieve your objective of increasing your collectability. In sum, I recommend not only the adoption of a bill affordability program, but I think one important, indeed critical aspect of that bill affordability program is that I recommend an income-based bill affordability program. And I recommend that not simply because it's good social policy, I recommend that because it's good business policy as well. Thank you very much again for the invitation to speak.
Thank you. Dan Ellis.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Dan Ellis. I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Housing Services here in Baltimore. I am a city resident and a proud fan of the Baltimore Ravens and Baltimore Orioles.
Thank you.
The water affordability program does a couple things for us. And I provided my written testimony, which I will not repeat, but it does a couple things that I want to highlight for you. A discounts program, what it does is it sets up, as Roger has described, a system where everybody doesn't get what they need. They all get the same amount. So one question that has often come up is, how do we pay for this? That's a fair question and one that needs consideration. And what you find is that according to the rate study provided by DPW back in January, there's currently the expectation at that point that $11 million annually was being budgeted for affordability programs. So the rate study in January said $11 million. Now they're rolling out an additional program with much more significant benefits that may have a higher cost. Don't know all the details yet. But what we end up with is a system where the cost, according to the analysis from the Council President's Office, shows that the cost of this program, the income-based billing program, starts off at $5 million and is implemented over time, increases to only $14 million. So the cost, $11 million that you increase over time, ends up costing you the same amount or less than what the discount programs are currently budgeted to cost. So the cost of the program is not saying go spend more money, it's say use your money more wisely. That's really what we're asking you to do through this legislation. Another important component is DPW, to their credit, and we agree with them, will tell us that they are not a social service agency and are not equipped to do this, and we absolutely agree with them. And we are not asking them to do that. We're asking them to use the existing social service networks that exist in Baltimore City to apply this program. Use the mayor stations, whatever we're calling them today. I've been here too long. But using, what's that? But using the assistance centers that exist around the city, using the nonprofits that exist, using the water benefit checkup, or the benefit checkup that is done in many places in order to sign people up the same way we do for the programs with BGE, with food stamps, with other programs that we're accustomed to providing. There are systems in place to do that. By adding this to that, the social service networks are much more equipped to reach the people who need help and services than DPW itself is. So we're not asking DPW to do a lot of administrative outreach, but rather to partner with the existing systems to apply and move this forward. There is also some analysis that shows the change in water bills over the last 9-10 years. In 2010, the average household water bill in Baltimore City was $378. Today, or in 2020, with the increases that are already approved, the average water bill in Baltimore City will be $1,022. That's a 250% increase since 2010. And with 9.9% increases projected for the next 6 years and increases beyond that, according to the rate study, the increases are going to result in a far more than doubling again of our already high water bill rates over the next 10 years. The time and the need for an affordability program is overdue because our residents are going to be pressured more and more moving forward to do this well. Another question that is raised that we have to consider is our bond rating. That is something that is important. It is something that impacts how we borrow money to make the necessary improvements to the system. But because the money has already been factored into the budget that was used for the rate increases and is being used by the bond agencies, there's not an impact on the bond rating because it's already been factored in. It already includes $11 million for affordability and will continue to improve going forward. The rate study also showed that at the time DPW had a surplus of $145 million. And so there are questions about making sure that, and I'm sure that's something the council has or will be inquiring about, to make sure that that is being well used. As a lender, you have to have liquidity in order to do work. That's appropriate. As a utility, DPW needs the same type of flexibility. The question is at what level and to what point. One thing that as a lender that we always have to consider in our lending, and this was passed through many, many laws since the financial crisis, is the ability of a customer, or the ability of a borrower to repay a loan. That's a fundamental belief and a fundamental principle for any loan that is being issued in this country at this point. We need the same type of consideration with our utility billing. The ability to repay is a critical component, and that's what this bill will do, is it will ensure that you have an ability to pay your bill at a rate that is appropriate for your income. In summary, what we have found in our analysis is that the water affordability program is more cost effective than the discount programs, and also that it is a much more equitable and affordable way for the city to meet the needs of all of its residents, including the tenants who comprise many of our low-income communities. Thank you for your consideration and support of this bill.
Thank you. At this point, the committee will now hear from agencies and your responses, and then we'll get back to some more testimony. We've received some very important information, and so I think it's time for some agency responses. And we'll start with, I think Nepal Nipper is here with the Health Department. Do you want to come up to the podium? And while you're doing that, I also want to recognize the Aging Commission on Aging is within the Health Department. We have some representatives here that I'd like to recognize. Betsy Simon and Sarah Matthews are members, as well as myself, representing the council. So I think they'll have testimony later as we move along. But go ahead, Nepal.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nepal Nibber. I'm here on behalf of the Baltimore City Health Department in support of 18-307. And with that in mind, I would like to cede my time to Ms. Marianne Brennan, an ombudsman with our Division of Aging and Care Services, to better explain the intersection between this bill and our work. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Mary Ann Brennan. I'm an ombudsman with Baltimore City Health Department, the Office of Aging Services. So I just wanted to share, our support with the bill. The Baltimore City Health Department is pleased with the opportunity to review, and the Office of Aging to review this bill, 18-0307. The Health Department has an interest in this bill because part of the Health Department comprises of my agency, with the Office of Aging Services, and our mission is to advocate for older adults on different issues, and also to encourage that they continue to live at home. Of course, paying for the services that allow them to remain at home is one of our mandates. So, part of our agency serves about 62,000 older Baltimore City seniors. And part of our mandate is that when there's a tax sale, when they are notified of their tax sale status, we're notified and we provide assistance to them. And this year we sent out about 1,000 letters to offering our assistance to these very same seniors. And of these seniors that we send out these letters, about 40% of them reported that it had to do with their water bill or issues with their water bill. When we notify the seniors of the support and assistance that we can provide, many of them come into our office because communication, I've been working with seniors for a long time, they feel very overwhelmed by the telephone communication they had with the agency that provides the water service. But they also may not be tech savvy. They get overwhelmed also by going through the bill, what it means. I'm overwhelmed when I look at that bill. And I get a little bit, have some anxiety. So for a senior who may have difficulty hearing, calling up the agency that provides that, that bills them, sometimes they just feel shut out. So they do a one-on-one, they come in, and we provide the assistance to them, and they really benefit from that one-on-one assistance that they get at our agency. And when they meet with us, they share their frustration. They also share their fears because they're getting this, most of them are getting this because they are actually the homeowner. And they're terrified of losing their home where they've raised their children, where they go to the local church, where they're part of the neighborhood association, they go to the senior center. And so we help them through our one-on-one support. We help them take the steps to address the issues that are often related to their water bill. And I think I can say with some confidence that we're very successful in helping them with that, in part because we give that one-on-one support. And I know that this bill provides some of that support that seniors would benefit from by having that communication and sort of helping people, and my emphasis is with the seniors, walk through their bill and help them find ways to either pay it or address or resolve the dispute with the agency. So for those foregoing reasons stated, and for my concern and our concern with the seniors, the Baltimore City Health Department strongly urges a favorable report for this bill at issue tonight.
Thank you for your testimony. The Office of Human Services, is there a representative?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here on behalf of the Mayor's Office of Human Services, and we
pull that down.
Oh, sorry. So I'm here on behalf of the Office of Human Services, and we support the bill.
Your name?
Ebony Wilder.
Thank you. Department of Housing and Community Development, Sharon DuBois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Sharon DuBois with Housing and Community Development. And we support this bill, and I really appreciate the testimony in the panels here today with the testimony and the background and the information they shared. But we're part of Housing and Community Development, and I think keeping people in their homes is important, and this is a way to do that. We definitely support that.
Thank
and
you.
If I can talk as Sharon DuBois, the resident of Baltimore City, I have experienced some of the same issues with water bill. So I can relate to having the difficulties with meter readings and trying to get people, and so I can relate. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And then now we'll hear from Department of Public Works. You can, if you want to stay there, or you can go to the podium. Marcia Collins.
Yes, thank you. Marcia Collins, Department
I'd
of
like
Public Works.
to make note, the director, I understand, is out of town.
Yes,
You can-
ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the way in which you've structured this hearing. It's very helpful to hear the panels and to hear the stories. And I found a number of the testimony very helpful. We still have a lot of questions about how this program would work. We do know that we have issues, as has been clearly outlined, that we have customers who are premise-based and not directly with an individual, and that's what gives rise to the issue of trying to accommodate tenants, particularly those who are served by large master meters and maybe in large multifamily dwellings. That makes for difficulty for us as far as not only being able to describe what may or may not be happening at the property, but also how we get that direct connection. I know that this particular bill is attempting to redefine what it means to be a customer, and for us, we have just some very practical issues about how that translates into performance. Our system right now is attached to meter service, and that for us, we need to be able to comply with this particular legislation. We would need to be able to find a way in which to have that relationship that is based on a meter, how you then extend that to some other configuration that would be expanded to include the tenant. So we have some concerns about how that would be realized, because if you've got multiple people off of one service, then we have to figure out how do we make that process work in a program that's connecting an owner and or occupant with a direct meter. How do you get involved in the manner in which those payments are made? That would mean that we are now looking at leases, subleases, how you make that process work to track those individuals, to be able to do the kinds of connections that is being outlined in this bill. So we still have a lot of questions about how that goes about it. I do know that Philadelphia did a similar program, which I believe Mr. Colton advised on. Is that correct, Mr. Colton? Yes. So there is a lot of mechanics behind making a switch to this, what is being offered here, and we would like to know more about how that has worked in Philadelphia, for example. We would like to know, how we go about doing such a relationship, and how the cost would be to do that as well. When obviously we have to think about cost. Our particular Baltimore H2O program that we're rolling out in July is a fixed discount. It looks at 175% federal poverty level and below. It will also have a plus program that would address those customers who are at 50% or less of the federal poverty level by giving them an additional $236 spread out over 12 months to help bring that percentage of income lower. This is all predicated on our current way in which we work with customers. I know that we sometimes look at gas and electric companies that have relationships with individuals, but I believe a lot of that is also done by sub-metering and a way in which to attach usage to an individual. So we have some very practical issues that we're faced with as a premise-based system that will take a lot of conversations to understand exactly how that works, how well that works, how you track it. We understand that the comment about we're not a social service agency, we understand that as well. One of the things we're doing in the BH2O program is working with the Human Services to work through the community action centers and their 5 locations. And we recognize that for those customers and clients they work with who are going to be there getting their energy assistance program, a lot of those criteria are based on very similar criteria for our program. And we believe that that makes for a much more streamlined process, so you can work through that program, have people signing up for energy assistance, and then they can also be eligible for our program as well, so you don't have to make people fill out multiple forms, go through the same process, show their income support multiple times to different entities. We felt that that would be a much smoother process and a faster implementation process and would give us a better opportunity to reach more people who would be eligible. We also had some other issues with other parts of the bill, but you have our written testimony. I don't want to take up additional time of the committee. I know you want to have the public testify. We just have some very practical issues and balancing that we're going to have to do if we're going to get anywhere near what this bill would like to do.
Before I get questions, there's 2 more agencies left that we can hear from, and then I'm sure there's some questions from that we can start with. The next Department of Finance, Pedro Aponte.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Pedro Ponte, Revenue Director representing the Department of Finance. Thanks for the opportunity to testify on this very well written bill. You have our testimony. I wanted to talk and speak about two specific concerns that we have in reference to the bill. The first one is what relates to the new program and the cost of the program. We understand BDPW currently has a program, an assistant program, several assistant programs for residents. They are in the process of launching in July 1st a new program that's going to have a coverage of 175% poverty level. And now this legislation that is proposing certain adjustments to what is existing. The water for all discount will increase the threshold to 200%, and it has a breakdown of 3 tiers of discount, which is I think is a good way to apply certain discounts by income level, and actually they use several levels of household income. But it also increased the people who will be eligible for the discount by incorporating renters. And the last component is the office that is going to be managing this program is going to have an additional cost. Our concern specifically about this is any additional funding needed for this type of program might have an impact on rate increases. As you know, we have scheduled rates increases for years to come, and we want to make sure that a program like this is funded with existing resources and doesn't stretch additional rate increases, which ultimately is going to affect residents, and we don't want that to happen. The second component, which I believe is more important in terms of finance for the city and especially for the general fund, is completely separate from the proposal of this incentive program, and it relates to the reduction in the redemption rate for tax sale from 12% to 5%. For the record, to be clear, no, we are not supporting outsiders or investors, but we have to recognize that the tax sale process plays an important role for the collection rate, especially for real property tax for the city. And we believe that the reduction that is proposed in this legislation from 12 to 5% will completely eliminate any incentive for investors to come to the city and participate in this program. I provide you, or the finance department provide you in our testimony, a table that shows alternative options for investment that people might be considering, or investors might be considering where to put their money instead of coming to tax sale at a 5% return. So those are our concerns, we believe, and we are open to answer any question. As a structure, this particular item, we are in opposition of the bill, and we will be glad to discuss any item that you have for us.
Thank you. The Law Department, Hillary Ruley, City Solicitor's Office.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. The Law Department approves the bill for form and legal sufficiency, but amendments are needed to conform it to certain charter requirements and certain state laws. Most of them are small tweaks, substituting the name of the Director of Finance when that applies instead of the Director of DPW, things like that. So we're happy to work with the committee on whatever changes are needed, but there's certainly nothing wrong with a credit that's based on income. So we're happy to help, and obviously you have our report. So
thank you.
No problem.
And then there were the two members of the Aging Commission. If you would, did you have a testimony? I'd like you to share your testimony. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Betsy Simon, Chairwoman Middleton, and distinguished members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of CB 180307. And I am speaking on behalf of the Baltimore City Commission on Aging and Retirement Education Services, the Commission, which advises the mayor and city council on issues to import to older adults in Baltimore City, submits the testimony in support of the Water Accountability and Equity Act. This position, or this testimony, actually has 6 paragraphs, and you have it, hopefully, as a full copy. For those present, I would just like to emphasize something from each paragraph. And first, it says what we all know. In paragraph 2, water is a basic human necessity. We all know that. And at the same time, the race for water in Baltimore City continues to increase at a substantial rate. For an example, in 2016 and again in 2019, the Board of Estimates in Baltimore City approved 30 to 33% increases in water rates, building on an increase of 100% in the preceding 10 years. Now, this is an issue for older adults, and I want to point out off record, older adults are older adults, not older children. We are active, and we are those in need. We're assets to the city and not burdens, and we vote. Many things are noted in paragraph 3, but most importantly, it says many of our at-risk older adults own their homes. That's why it's a critical issue. And though it may be assumed that they may not be present much longer, it is very clear that older adults want to leave a legacy and they want these homes left to their children and families. Therefore, when older adults have to make tough decisions about which bill to pay, the water bill, groceries, medications, property tax, and they lose their homes and end up homeless, as our sister said, or on Medicaid in a nursing home. This is not where we want to be. In paragraph 4, we mainly say that the Department of Public Works offers some discount programs to customers to assist with their water bills, and these programs, even if expanded, are not adequate to address the increase. What do we say in paragraph 5? It said, we recently held a town hall meeting where older adults from across the city came together to register concerns they have about their lives, everything about their families, but the number one concern was the water bill. And so therefore, I want to read verbatim. The commission is saying, creating a water affordability program will ensure permanently affordable water service, further establishing an office of the water consumer advocate will ensure water customers are able to address building issues in a timely manner. For these reasons, the Baltimore City Commission on Aging and Retirement Education Services urge a favorable vote for CB 180307. But on a slightly different note, if I may, as an older adult myself, and as one who is a full-time volunteer advocate for older adults in Baltimore City, I meet with at least 150 to 200 older adults every week in Baltimore City, across the city. And every time we address the issues that are troublesome, stress relief, stressful, when we talk about every health equity, and social justice issue, each and every week, one of the concerns is a water bill. It may be Miss W, who lives in Park Heights, and who came in tears that her water bill was about $4,000. We felt we could help because we work with agencies that help us to do gap services, things to fill in the gaps. And so we referred her, and she was able to get some assistance, and she got her water bill down to $400. However, just last week, she met me in the hall to say, you know what? I just got another water bill. It's back up again. So we have to start the process over again. We acknowledge and appreciate the discount water payments, programs, initiatives. We even have gap service clinics in each section of the city with the Maryland Volunteer Lawyers Services, with Civic Works, with Hubs, with any agency that works. We partner with about 100 agencies to get these programs in 3 locations every single Thursday and Friday to meet with adults to talk about issues. But despite all that, it will not be able to handle the gap. And so we, as members of ZHAP, the Zeta Healthy Aging Partnership, which is going citywide by 2020, y'all gonna help me, right? And we want you to know that we are still concerned about the water bills because that drives so many other things. We talk about eating well. We talk about involving yourself in some things that help you to socialize, since socialization is an issue for older adults. We talk about things needed to age in place. You can't age in place without water. And as I close, I just want you to remember, we support this bill from a personal standpoint, from a point of clarity from all the older adults that we encounter, and on behalf of the commission. But as I leave, just remember, older adults are assets to the city. We're not burdens. We're active, and many are aging in place, so water is essential. We vote in favor of this bill.
Thank you for your powerful testimony. Are there any questions at this point from, we'll start with Councilman Stokes. We still have some more testimony.
I have some suggestions, but I also, I've been talking about the water bill issue in the whole council since I've been here, and my question was, thank God that the General Assembly passed the bill that you cannot go into tax sale. But my other question was to DPW, where is the safety net there? Because even though you can't put it in the tax, you can't go in the tax roll, what happens when they get a bill? And good example, the lady got a $4,000 bill. Where's the safety net? Because now it comes to the point where our seniors now might have their service turned off. So my suggestion to DPW is, and I'll work within the council, how do we create a safety net for persons who get extraordinary water bills that actually are not accurate, but they're still in the process of having their service turned off? My second question is, when somebody dispute a bill, and I've been talking about this for 3 years, and constituents call, they don't hear nothing from DPW, absolutely nothing. And I've been saying, create a standard letter, send it out, and be responsive to people. Right now, you don't hear from them. People get upset, seniors get upset, they don't know if the water gonna be turned off. Create a standard letter, say we receive your dispute, we'll follow back up with you. But when you constantly keep calling, nobody answer the phone, ladies say they wait an hour and a half to see somebody, all you gotta do is create a bill. People feel like you can ignore them when they dispute a bill and nobody totally answer the phone, they don't get a letter. That is really hard on a person who actually, my other question is, and I think it was a great idea that you're talking about having the people at the hubs to help out with the water bills, but are your community liaisons gonna be working there? I have went over there with my constituents and see how you read a bill. It's very difficult to read and understand what it means. So my suggestion to DPW, instead of putting all that on the hubs, because they got enough problems or work they doing now, why don't some of your neighborhood liaison person go over there maybe 2 or 3 days a week who know about the billing, who can help? You can't have somebody from the hub who don't know nothing about to read the bill, what to read, how to read it. That's a whole new training mechanism for them. So my suggestion is have the neighborhood liaisons go over to these hubs maybe 3 days a week and let them just deal with water bills, not people that already work there that don't know absolutely nothing about the water bill and they got to be retrained over. Thank you.
Vice Chair Pinkett.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The fiscal analysis that we received from Council President Scott's office showed over 5 fiscal years that the Water Accountability and Equity Act had a cumulative cost of $44 million about, and the DPW proposal of $63 million. Ms. Collins, can you speak to that? I know I looked at the report that was submitted from DPW, but when I read the report, it seems like maybe you all saw a previous draft of this, because it talked about the fact that the enrollment for the Water Accountability and Equity Act was less than the DPW one, but the report that I'm looking at has a higher enrollment for this legislation.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Pinkett. I did receive, we had a conversation with the chairwoman and representatives of the President's office regarding this legislation the other day, and the President's office was kind enough to provide us with a draft of their fiscal analysis, and I don't know if it's the same as what you have in front of you. I was told that it probably wouldn't change much, but it has 2 charts in it that compares our DPW H2O Assist program and projects it out over 5 years, and the same it does for the Water for All. And I was confused by it because for several reasons. One, it's showing less of an impact on the Water for All program, even though they are talking about more households and larger discounts. So I don't know. I can't explain that. I would expect it to
Sounds
be.
like a good deal, right?
And it may just be that I'm not I'm looking at the assumptions. It may just be I'm not understanding what's happening here. But, you know, we looked at our program, which we anticipated to be about 43,000 households that would be eligible based on, you know, updated census tract data. And obviously, the program that's offered in the bill is much larger because they're widening the opportunity for tenants, and they're going to 200% of the federal poverty level. So that's one of the questions I have. I don't have an answer for it, but you know, I would hope. My understanding is we're going to continue these conversations, so I hope I can get a better understanding of that particular breakdown.
Yes, I think we agree that this is just very complicated and we want to get it right. So
Yes.
I'm sure there's going to be a couple work sessions.
Yes.
And I'd
So-
like you to provide that information to.
Yeah, that would be helpful for us to understand, and I don't expect to go through it tonight, but I'm not exactly understanding why that would be the case. Perhaps I'm being a little dense, but my expectation is it would be more, just based on the fact that we're dealing with a larger populace and folks who are not considered a direct customer. So it would be helpful. The other thing that we didn't talk about, I got back to my earlier comments when we testified about the fact that we need to do what's in this bill would require us to make changes to our billing system to create relationships that don't currently exist. And by that I mean, you know, tenants who are behind a master meter or maybe in multiple family dwellings. Those are also costs that we have to feel, to understand as well, because that tends to be pretty pricey.
So do I detect that you agree that there are some customer service issues that need to be worked on, or business issues, as Mr. Holton had?
Well, I certainly need to have a better understanding of how that business issue is going to work under this program that's being offered. Yes, I do need to understand that.
Okay.
Because I appreciate that a fiscal note was prepared. I'm just not, I feel like there's more involved in what it will cost to do a program as aggressive and comprehensive as being discussed here this evening. And we would need to know what that might be. Obviously, you are anticipating or estimating, approximating what the impact may be, but as long as we can figure out together what that is, that gives us a better sense of what the expectations are, how you accommodate that within a program. So that would be helpful for us as well, Councilman.
Yeah, I mean, $19 million is a pretty significant delta between the two programs. Even if there's some cost to implementing the program, I don't think it's going to be close to $19 million.
To implement the program?
No, I'm saying even if you're saying that they aren't considering some costs that would come with the Water Accountability and Equity Act, it's not going to be $19 million.
I don't know what it would be. I mean,
Right. So we need to. So DPW needs to look at this more to understand.
Well, I think we'll need help understanding.
Okay, got you.
And I don't want to keep bringing up Philadelphia, but really that's the only other city that I am aware of that has done a similar type of program looking at the larger community of consumers versus
And we do have
customers.
advocates and community organizations that are willing to help and work through that. You had another question?
And so that leads to my next question I had for Mr. Colton. But before I ask the question, I just wanted to make a statement that, and maybe DPW has been working on this and I'm just not aware of it, but it's a little bit unsettling hearing a lot of the testimony this evening that's related to people who find themselves in rent court related to their water bills. These aren't homeowners, these are renters. And regardless of the challenges, and regardless of whether DPW is a social service entity or not, we should feel an obligation to the residents and citizens of Baltimore that we figure out how we can provide services to a population where we already said it was 52% of the city are renters, a population that we know it needs the resources and are not getting the resources. So at some point we can't talk about the challenges. We got to figure out a solution, and whatever that is to address that. Regardless of this particular legislation, this is something that we should have been working on a while ago. And it leads me to my question for Mr. Colton, and I'm not certain how long Philadelphia's program has been in place, but hearing DPW talk about the challenges with renters, obviously Philadelphia has stepped up to the plate and accepted that challenge, it appears. So can you speak a little bit about how it's happening, or is it too soon to and maybe what they are trying to do that we are currently challenged with?
The city of Philadelphia has considered the issue of renters, and it's even more complicated. I don't want to introduce more complications than have already been introduced, but it's the question not only of renters versus owners, but it's the question of people who occupy a dwelling unit without being a renter. There are questions about people where units have been passed from one generation to the next generation, but it never went through probate, so heaven only knows what the real ownership is. But the question about what are the outcomes from Philadelphia, it's too early to tell. Philadelphia started accepting applications in July of 2017, but it took them about 8 or 10 months to really start gearing up. And I asked for information about 2 weeks ago, and the information just doesn't exist yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Clark?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Plug yourself in.
Everybody. I have, just for now, 2 questions and a comment. I'm putting these 2 questions out for future responses. One, is this Water for All program limited to Baltimore City residents? I'm just asking that because it never says anything about it that I remember in the bill, but I presume so. I hope so, because I think we're calculating based on that. Secondly, since the Electric Universal Service Program seems to have the same criteria as the proposed water program, do we know how many of our city residents are already approved and part of this program under the Department of Human Resources in the state? So how many of our people are already basically pre-qualified for the water program? Those are my questions. Here's my comment, and I'm not ready to get into a debate about it yet, but I certainly am ready to get into a huge debate if we can't resolve it. The law departments, I just saw this, so I would have talked to you, but I just saw it. The law department is doing something that I think is a problem for the program, and that is amending the Office of Water Customer Advocacy and Appeals. I'm going to call it the Advocacy Office, okay? Making it a part of the Department of Public Works. Now, so the First Amendment says, the text says, there is an Office of Water Customer Advocacy and Appeal. Amendment says, in the Department of Public Works. Those are very important, how many? 5 words. And here's why. Once upon a time, there was an informal conference system for water appeals. The advocates have come up with a much more elaborate and thorough, and I support it, plan than that. But here's what was good about that. The person who was the decider of whose appeals got granted did not work for the Department of Public Works. They were contractors. They were contracted, but they were not employees of the department. Now, there's nothing wrong with the Department of Public Works as a department at all. But it shouldn't control the people that are helping the public meet and deal with them. It just defeats the purpose of what this whole thing is about. So, and then in another place, here is the line that gets struck under the advocacy office. This is an amendment to strike the following language. The office, strike, shall operate independently and outside the control of the Department of Public Works. Now, we're going to have work sessions, we're going to have discussions.
Yes.
But ladies and gentlemen, and there is nothing untoward about the Department of Public Works and its billing section and all that it does. But that's the adversary, the worthy opponent, the worthy adversary of people appealing the billing. It can't be controlled by the same department, okay? So let's not debate it now,
Right.
but let's remember it, because otherwise, this bill, give me my informal conference back that we used to use all the time, and it was controlled by what that master said, and the agency was obligated, we pray.
Looks like
and we know.
Hillary wants to respond. She's dying to respond.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll get into it.
There, no, there's no reason it can't be a contractor. It's solving.
The whole.
As it was in the informal conference, as long as they're under that umbrella, they can actually see the bill and make adjustments. There's
The whole,
right,
say,
so it's
okay,
fine.
so the whole agency, I mean, not, this whole, what do they call it? They're calling it office of.
Sure.
Has got to be under that agreement then.
But there's no reason they can't be the outside contractors they were before.
So that'll be
So
one of
you
our,
can- So we can work this out.
that'll be
Sure.
one of our topics of discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so can I ask the law department if they would withdraw those two amendments pending our coming up with a better way to do this?
Well, I mean, the purpose of the amendment is the law the under state law, the record of what someone owes rests with that custodian, and here it's DPW. So you want to make sure, however you structure it, the entity reviewing the bill is legally allowed to see what the bill is and legally allowed to make adjustments. So you can call it whatever you want, but if you don't put it under the DPW umbrella, they're not going to have those two functions, so you make it impotent. If you have it like a contractor that it was before, that's fine. That's certainly fine.
We're talking about an entire office of people overseen by an entire board of majority
And under-
council members.
Right, and under,
Councilwoman, the
right.
committee has not adopted any
No,
amendments.
I'm saying it now because I don't want to get deep into where
Understood.
where we're into it and we don't know that we are, because that's and that to give law a way to let this exist independent of the Department of Public Works, but with a bridge over that gets it the kind of access that the contractual master had in informal conferences.
It can have the exact same access, and it can be as independent as that informal one was. Under the charter, only the director of DPW has certain functions. So if you don't house this within that, then this independent person wouldn't be mandating a change, they'd just be recommending one. So, I mean, I think you need the power that comes under the charter.
Well, then you lose
But you would get the same independence as the independent,
So you're
as the contractor.
Well, wait a minute. On this note,
Councilwoman, we do have
Yes.
some other testimony and also another council person that has a question.
of course, I'm sorry.
So we will continue this discussion at the work session.
Well, I hope it
and
goes in a
will
better
be at-
direction.
It will be at the top of the list.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
You're welcome. Councilman Reisinger, I know you've been waiting patiently.
I'm good, Madam Chair. I just want to piggyback on Councilwoman Clark. I know we're going to have work sessions, and this is a comment, and I think we're going to, as a legislative body, we'll work through all the semantics and the issues that we have with the water issue. But number one, I want to thank those two or three employees from DPW that were here tonight. I just wish someone could explain to me why the director was not here. I might be rude. Can someone tell me why Director Rudy Chow is not here tonight? This is a very
important question.
issue, huh?
Could someone answer that? You want to come up to the podium and introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm Yolanda Winkler. I'm the Chief of Communications, Community Affairs, and Key Performance Measurements for the Department of Public Works. And Director Chow is not here, and we are very proud of Director Chow as he's being recognized nationally by the American Association for Public Works as one of the top 10 leaders in the industry.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole, but what I'm going to say is that for like 2 years, the current mayor, who was president at the time, was trying to work with DPW to straighten out this, to remediate this situation. And we even had a hearing, I think, that Councilwoman Clark informational hearing at one time, and DPW came in, and, but like I say, I don't want to ramble on, it's been 2 years, and then the president had to introduce a bill in December, and here we are, May. And, you know, I think we all know that it's the process, customer service, you know, trying to pay the bill. The only thing what I want to say to the public work employees here, and I was hoping Rudy Chow would be here so I could tell him personally, is that we need the director to have an open mind and sit down with the council and the advocates to work this out. We can't go into semantics now, we're going to have a work session. But we had the same problem with transportation with Complete Streets. And with Complete Streets, with DOT, we were able to sit down, the council, the committee, with the director of DOT, and it took work sessions and meetings, but we worked out a solution which was the best for the city. Madam Chair, I just want to say to my colleagues and to DPW that I know that they have their plan, you know what I mean? And we just want DPW to sit down again to make it a win-win situation so we don't wait for another 2 years dealing with this same issue.
Exactly. Department of Public Works, can you please make note of that and share that with Director Chow? We would like him to be a part of the next scheduled work session. It's very crucial that he is present. He's the leader of Department of Public Works, and he needs to be involved.
Yes, I'm making copious notes of everything that people are saying here this evening, and it would be great if for the written testimony that's been submitted, if we could arrange to get copies so that we can have that information directly, so that I make sure that my notes are accurately reflecting what people have said who've submitted written comments. We'd be glad to do that.
You have to come to the mic.
One of the challenges we had regarding the scheduling of this meeting is that it wasn't coordinated with us, and therefore the director was not able to adjust his schedule because this is a national event that's taking place. But he certainly is open to that. I want to address a couple of issues. One, as it relates to the seniors, we certainly sympathize with all of you regarding your stories you have had. DPW has always had a senior assistance program and a low-income program. However, I will say from my perspective, and I've been there since January the 23rd, the marketing has not been very good of those assistance programs. Because the programs are pretty generous, but perhaps most of the seniors were made aware of that. And so one of the jobs that I'm tasked with, new being on the job, is marketing. We have to market better, so we will market better. I will also share with you that the program that the director has put forth is very, very generous now, that the mayor has endorsed. It has two components to it so that we do take in consideration our seniors, and we can discuss that more at the work sessions. And it is also linked to, I heard one of the gentlemen say, well, maybe you shouldn't link it to human services. That's exactly what the new program does. It takes the human services database of their energy assistance, and it dumps our customer base into their database, and then a match, and it kicks it out so that you can qualify. It's the same criteria that's being used, and you will qualify for that assistance. And so we have to get better in terms of how we do business, and we will. We're doing better.
Any questions before she? Oh,
No, not a question. I just wanted to make a
Statement.
quick statement. Thank you, Madam Chair. And we just wanted to dovetail off of Councilman Reisinger's comments, and maybe Councilwoman Clark might also feel the same way. To me, it seems like, as it relates to DPW, in just less than 2 weeks, from this hearing and then the zero waste hearing, that the council, and I've only been on the council a little over 2 years, tries to be forward-thinking as it relates to issues like water affordability and as it relates to recycling. And I'm not certain if DPW is hearing the concerns from the council and the residents, because we seem to always get to this point where stuff has been asked for, stuff has been proposed, and we keep getting to a place where it's, to me, it's almost like we have to force, to DPW to get to a place where the residents are calling, the citizens of Baltimore are calling for. And I don't know what the disconnect is between the actions that we are expecting from this agency and what the citizens of Baltimore are calling for, but it's a clear disconnect, because it's not just happening in one area. It seems like it's happening over and over and over. And that's something that's broken that needs to be fixed.
And just to add, it's also a disconnect with other agencies, is you have to connect with housing and community development. You have to, there's pieces to this puzzle in other agencies that can help the Department of Public Works. So please make note of that as well.
May I just say one thing?
Yes, we still have some more testimony.
I would like to say, and you'll be pleased to know, that we're making great strides with zero waste, working with the director, and we've come up with a partnership between the advocates consultant and DPW's to work in parallel and keep in touch with each other. It's a long story, but basically it was a great accomplishment on all sides, and it just happened so recently. So I just wanted to say, and thanks to Councilman Reisinger for, he's the peacemaker, and not that people were fighting, really.
Yes,
but it's a wonderful cooperative thing that has occurred, and the whole reports will come out sort of, we hope, in tandem at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we just want to do the same with all these, water.
Right.
And I think that the fact that, I just have to say this, I know how hard Public Works has worked on its programs and thought about them. I'm very supportive of this legislation, but I'm also very, very appreciative of what Public Works has tried to do. I'm sorry, it's just they've done so much, we just got to we do have to go to the future.
Thank you. So now as we move, it's now about just 7:21, and there's a number of people that still have signed up. So I just ask if you really have something different that you can add as I call your name, please, I will allow you to. If not, and you'd like to pass, just let me know that, and I'll call your name as well. I know that Sarah Matthews has been waiting. Was there something different? You're also with the Aging Commission. Is there something you'd like to add extra? Please, you can come to the podium.
Thank you. I will try and be very swift. Thank you very much
pull
for
that all the
allowing
way
me to
down.
speak, Councilwoman. My name is Sarah Matthews. I'm a commissioner with the Department of Aging and Care Services and a member of the Adult Guardianship with the Baltimore City Department of Social Services. Most importantly, I am a senior retiree from the state of Maryland and an advocate for senior citizens in Baltimore City. I'm here as an advocate today for seniors who are unable to be here themselves, who are still living in their homes and receiving increasingly high water bills from the city of Baltimore. I stand before you here in support of the Water Accountability and Equity Act, which is promulgated under Council Bill 18-0307. Most importantly, I'm here to support the senior population who are experiencing hardships in paying their water bills and a lack of clarity about the bill process, a lack of notification, and an understanding of how to register a complaint or seek mediation as it relates to water bill dispute. which they experience when they receive their monthly water bills, and the fees have increasingly increased without notification. According to seniors in the community whom I meet with periodically, laments that they are not receiving the assistance they need to understand their monthly water bill statements. Many seniors cannot navigate a clear understanding from customer service via the telephone. The water usage amount isn't accessible to them via the customer account computer services, and the Informer conference is no longer available to them because it was disbanded approximately 2 years ago. A large number of seniors are not computer savvy. As a result, with the new customer care component doesn't lend itself to seniors as it relates to clarification, disputes of their monthly water bill increases. The customer service is severely lacking when it comes to addressing senior citizens' disputes and the panic alarm that they experience when they see a sudden increase of their bills. Seniors living in their own homes are still receiving notices about their home being listed on the tax sales due to liens on their property. A week ago, which is very important, a senior contacted me extremely upset because her home was on the tax sale list. When she visited the water department, she was told that she was losing her home due to a $100 balance on her account from 2004. 15 years later, she's going to lose her home. Seniors need more streamlined notification of any balances that they may owe, and a follow-up system should be put in place to ensure that that notification is received about any balances owed. Water usage and sewer services costs can be streamlined and affordable for all residents, including seniors, if they are informed about meter reading billing versus estimate billings. Another issue for seniors, when the sewer services are added to the bill and how often it is added to the bill, since adding that service will increase the bill significantly, and this will surely raise the panic alarm for seniors, for us. Baltimore H2O Assist will begin on July 1, as we've heard here tonight. It will surely provide some relief to seniors in Baltimore City. And SB 0096 bill, which is a cross-filing of HB 161 bill, will give us some peace of mind and reassurance that our property will not be placed on the tax sale list due to any liens for water bill balances. Special thanks to Senator Mary Washington and to this council for providing protection for seniors who may have their property in a tax sale due to increased balances and water bill, including sewer services. Thank you, council, for undertaking and providing residents and especially seniors who may not be able to afford to pay their water bill and stand a chance of their water being turned off. It is our hope that Mayor Young's new independent reviewer services will be made available to seniors and that we will be able to have an opportunity to exercise and use that component. We are the target population that is most vulnerable in understanding processes, and most seniors don't have access to computers, and we're being taxed additionally now with high transportation fees. We won't be able to even come to advocate for our own selves. In summary, I personally have a lingering question for this committee to think about. Why is it that Baltimore City supplies water to Baltimore County and our bills are approximately 10 cheaper than our bills are approximately 10% higher than the residents in Baltimore County. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like the committee to have a copy of your testimony, you can. Okay. Thank you. That's good. It would be good when we have our work sessions. So now we'll start with Molly Amster. I know all of you have been just waiting patiently, and also the committee is holding up here too.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, Councilman. I really appreciate you all taking the time. I know this has been long already. I'm Molly Amster. I'm the Baltimore Director for Jews United for Justice. We are a member of the Baltimore Right to Water Coalition and have been working on water issues in Baltimore since there were thousands of shutoffs in 2016. I wanted to respond to some of the questions that have been raised and statements that have been made, which I think are important to address. The first is the question about, or concern raised by the Finance Department about costs of the program leading to further rate increases. And I want to ensure the members of the council that we care deeply about the financial success of the department to meet its requirements, especially to adhere to environmental regulations. We want our infrastructure to be improved, and we actually think that this affordability program is the business the smart business choice. It's Roger Colton's study of Baltimore City's water system shows that not taking action to address the fact that every time rates increase, we collect less money because people can't afford their bills is actually the financially irresponsible thing to do. So we want, the reason we're proposing this solution is because we do believe that it is the smart financial thing for the city to do to take care of this issue, both in terms of making sure that we can meet our obligations to the environment, to the infrastructure, but also to the people in the city who are struggling most to pay their bills. It's a real blessing that we can meet both of those goals, which are so important to all of us. And the question that Ms. Collins raised about the difference that you pointed out, Councilman, about what the discount program would cost, which was estimated at more than $63 million, and what the affordability program that we're proposing, the Water for All program, what that would cost, which is somewhere around $40-some million. And that difference is accounted for from, again, what Mr. Colton shared earlier, which is that if people are all given the same amount, which is what a discount program does, then it's going to cost more than if we just give people what they need to afford their bill. So I only need $50, and another person needs $100, and rather than give us both $100, you can just give me the 50 and them the 100, or I can't remember what I started with, but you get the point.
Based on their situation.
Whatever it is, not giving, making it a more tailored approach actually saves us money, and that's where that can be accounted for. My councilwoman, Mary Pat Clark, asked about, is the Water for All program only for city residents? And it is. But something that I find very exciting as a person working with folks in Baltimore County as well, the dispute resolution process is something that would be available to all DPW customers. The chair of my leadership council here in Baltimore used to work for council, is a county resident. We have about 1,000 folks in Baltimore City, but we have almost 1,000 more in the county. And she used to work for Councilman Vicky Almond's office and was doing, taking constituent phone calls and was getting complaints about billing that she couldn't really help them with. So it's very exciting to see that this is a benefit that would go beyond just our city residents. The question about the other thing that Councilwoman Clark raised about the independence of the office of the customer advocate is one I just want to re-emphasize is really crucial to us. there's a real lack of trust in the department, and that alone should warrant this kind of independence. But we also have seen, you know, I think it's already been stated why it's important, so I'll just move on. I agree with that. DPW stated that they have generous programs that they already offer to seniors and to people who are low income. But, you know, I don't know the numbers for the newest addition, which was announced yesterday to H2O Assist, but I can tell you that H2O Assist, which will go into effect July 1, still leaves, and I imagine this will be adjusted some by the addition, but at that point, people making around $10,000 a year would still be paying 8 to 10% of their income for water, which far exceeds the UN's level of affordability, which they put at 3% in their human right to water policy. And, you know, in terms of the promises to address this, and, you know, they're aware and they're working on it. I know that everyone's very hardworking, but we've been here for years talking about the same problems as has been mentioned. And the things that need to be fixed still need to be fixed. And we have a concern that if we don't legislate these changes, they can just be changed at the whim of the director. And a perfect example of that is the informal conferences, which were taken away and with no replacement. So there was literally no formal dispute resolution process for folks. We want to work with DPW. We've been working with them. We gave them a draft of this legislation in October of 2017. They still have not provided alternatives or suggestions for how we can amend the bill to, you know, work for all of us. We're happy to do that, but we also know that people can't wait. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here today. I just want to also say I too have had tons of billing problems with DPW, and also dealt with tax sale anxiety and spent hours and days of my life trying to advocate for myself. So thank you very much, and I look forward to addressing the concerns with you all.
For your testimony. Mary Hughes. Thank you for you being patient and waiting.
Okay, well, thank you. And an hour's late and everything's been said. I'm just going to read 2 of the paragraphs that I had from my prepared speech. No need to be redundant here. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. My name is Mary Hughes. I'm a resident of Vice Chair Pinkett's District 7 and a committee member for the Panway Community Association. I want to thank you for last month sending T.J. Rice to help us with our community cleanup. Thank you so much. The Water Accountability and Equity Act provides the solutions to our community water affordability and accountability problems. This bill offers meaningful solutions that get to the root of the problem, as opposed to the Band-Aid fixes that DPW is proposing. Let me get off script here and say this. I'm young of heart, but I'm an old woman. My husband and I would like to stay in our home until the good Lord takes us. And the older person who wants to stay in their home has to make some adjustments. Maybe a mobile chair going up the steps and whatever. Guess who we had at our house today? Had a young man come in to talk to us about something, and he confirmed something. He said 80% of the accidents or the fatalities that happen with seniors is in the bathroom. So that's why we were interested to remain independent, to have a walk-in tub, have the air jets, the whole thing be so nice. You can come over when we get it done. And we like the idea, but here's the thing. He says you got a 40-gallon water tank. You may need a 50. That means more money. That means the cost of our water bill is going to go up. It's high enough, and it's hard enough to pay as it is. But we want to stay in our homes. And young lady, you're in marketing, and you're dealing with the senior issues. This is something you better consider. If seniors want to stay in Baltimore and stay in their homes, you have got to be more compassionate toward us to do things where we aren't reluctant to stay, but encouraged to stay in our homes. And that is part of all that's going on. We love this city. Baltimore City is a great, I don't care what the world says, Baltimore City is a great city. We do not want to leave this city. But if you keep allowing things that DPW is doing to the citizens of this city, it's wrong. You're going to push us out and nobody's going to come. Here's my other thing. Next year's an election year. You know what I want to hear? I want to hear that there be an overhaul of DPW. Something's not right. No one can care and love this city and the citizens and bring forth proposals that they have been bringing forth for years to be a burden to us. You cannot care about us. You cannot care about the city and where it's going. It's got to be an overhaul. And I thank you so much.
Thank you. Marshall Collins? Is Marshall Collins still here? Or Colin Marshall, sorry, I did. Moving on. Jim Campbell. Moving on. Reverend Kobe Little. Good evening. Thank you for your patience.
Good to see you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the council. I am Kobe Little. I'm the president of the Baltimore NAACP. I'm joined this evening by our political action chair, Ms. Charlie Carter. We're here to express our support for CB 180307, the Water Accountability and Equity Act. The Baltimore City branch of the NAACP strongly supports this legislation. And not only is this legislation an equity issue, not only is this an important issue for the well-being of our citizens, but we also see this as a small step towards peace building. All of us contribute to the violence in this city, and city government is certainly no exception. So every opportunity that the city has to make things more just is also an opportunity to create and build peace. We believe that water is fundamental to life and therefore is a basic human right. And it is our responsibility as a society to ensure that everyone has access. Poverty and economic insecurity should not limit a person's access to water. The Water Accountability and Equity Act takes bold steps to ensure that Baltimore City's most vulnerable populations, which are often black and poor, are not further marginalized because of rising water bills. Just 4 years ago, Baltimore made national headlines when it sent notices of impending disconnection to nearly 25,000 water customers. Mostly poor and people of color, these customers had struggled for years to challenge, correct, and afford their water bills. Since 2015, the cost of water has continued to climb, far outpacing inflation and the increase of wages. If the measures proposed in this legislation are not implemented, the numbers of families who will struggle to afford this most basic right, the right to water, will only continue to climb as the city implements approved rate increases over the next 5 years. As the mayor has said, our city cannot keep raising rates on households who already cannot afford to pay these bills. In short, the NAACP feels very strongly about this legislation, Madam Chair, and we urge a favorable report from this committee to the entire council. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. And if you want to submit your testimony to the committee, you can please get that into us. Michael Fish.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the council. I come from this slightly different perspective. I am probably the least intelligent person in the room. I am a small landlord in Baltimore City. I actually am very pleased with my water bill because I live in the county, so I have no complaints about my bill. However, my tenants are facing insanely high bills. We had a tenant recently who ties into what you were saying. She's a Section 8 tenant. She's on a lease that requires her, as part of her lease, to pay the water bill. There was a leak. We fixed the leak. She had a $600 bill. I went to this DPW, I gave them all the information they needed, the signed affidavit from the licensed plumber, a receipt from Lowe's. At the end of the day, our $600 water bill was reduced by $53.40. And I said, how did you come up with this number? I said, is it $1 for every phone call I've made? And it was more like 50 cents for every phone call I made. But they said, no, what happens is we're giving you a credit on the water that, that comes in. But I said, well, the majority of the bill is on the water that goes out. I said, the water was leaking from a toilet. Where do you expect this water to go? And they said, well, we're sorry, we're only giving you credit for the water that comes in. And we're just assuming the same amount goes out, which is a totally inaccurate statement, because if you use the water to water your lawn or wash your car or drink, then the majority of that bill is being billed incorrectly, and they are not measuring correctly, and therefore the water bills are all improper because they're billing the majority of the bill on what goes out. On what goes out, and what you use is just a small portion of that bill. And I am considered myself a fairly unintelligent and therefore not very profitable landlord. An intelligent landlord would have said, tough luck, I don't have any compassion for you, I'm taking you to court, as you said. If I'd taken her to court, this lady here knows exactly what would happen. The court would find in my favor because she hasn't paid the bill. It's required for her bill to be paid under Section 8. She would lose her voucher and be homeless.
Thank you for your important testimony.
You're welcome.
Madeline Becker. Madeline Becker. Okay, Nicole, I might say your last name wrong. Lesson Cow, not here. Mary Ann Brennan. Oh, okay, I'll check her off. Patricia Trudy.
Hello. My name is Patricia Truex, Madam Chair. And I was listening to a talk show on the radio last night. And I heard they were being held hostage by people that have infiltrated the city's computer system. People on the radio were recommending we pay the people sabotaging our computers. They stated last night the city water bills have been affected. This is important knowledge for all of us. What can we do about sabotaging or something that affects each one of us? Malicious software is a problem that must be addressed. We need to have people that are honest to address these problems, and it cannot be ignored. We want our city to be free of harassment through sabotaging of our city computers, but not by paying ransom.
Thank you. Ryan Potter.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'll be exceedingly brief. My name is Ryan Potter. I'm an attorney with a firm called Gallagher, but I'm here today on behalf of the Baltimore Development Work Group. Most of you know it's an affinity group of folks having real estate interest in the city, both for-profit and nonprofit. And we just wanted to voice our support for the bill and specifically the new, more robust and structured dispute resolution mechanisms, which are a consistent problem for many of our members. So, thank you.
Thank you. Gary Nelson. Gary Nelson. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, members of the council. I struck most of my words that I wrote down today in the interest of time. But as I was listening to the testimony, the horror stories about water bills, I had Martin Luther King in my head because he very famously said, isn't it something, isn't it a shame that on a planet that's 70% water that we have a water bill? And right at the top of my piece of paper, I say, first of all, water is a human right. That's been repeated many times, and repetition is one of the best ways that we learn. So let us never forget that. That being said, as I began to think of the words of my testimony today, I was reminded of the words of Chief Sequoyah from the end of the 19th century. He said, once all the water, air, and soil are polluted, we will find out that we can't eat or drink money. Those propitious words echo strongly in today's world where water has become a commodity. Our attempts here today are in solidarity with poor and working people worldwide who can't afford clean drinking water. Fracking, pollution, oftentimes the intentional poisoning of our water must stop now. I suggest that all of you, if you get the chance, Google the top 10 documentaries on water. Documentaries like Bottled Life, Flow, For Love of Water, etc. Only 3% of the world's water is fresh water. Desalination is as yet not feasible. Pipelines, gas lines, spills, etc. have us at the edge of extinction. We must act locally and think globally. Water is life. The indigenous up there in Dakota taught us that over and over again as they were being attacked by dogs, just like they were in Alabama during Selma times, Bull Connor, etc. I came across this quote, and I'll finish with this recently. It's a very good quote. From this moment, despair ends, tactics begin.
Thank you for your testimony. Father Ty Hullinger.
Mercifully brief. You, I think, already have testimony from me. I would just echo what the last gentleman shared as well. I was reminded earlier in the year through one of those regular emails I get from my leader, Pope Francis from the Vatican, when on March 22nd, when the world remembered World Water Day this year, he spoke to its theme. This year's theme was Leaving No One Behind. And Pope Francis said that water is an essential good for the balance of ecosystems and human survival, and it is necessary to manage it and take care of it so that it is not contaminated or lost. For this reason, leaving no one behind means committing ourselves to putting an end to this injustice. Access to water is a fundamental human right, which must be respected because the life of the people and their dignity are at stake. And I think that describes the moment we're in. We know that in Baltimore we can't leave anyone behind anymore. And so we've heard the stories of people that are being left behind by processes and by systems, by decisions or lack of decisions on their behalf to bring them truly permanently affordable water. Many of you may know I've also been working with a lot of communities across the city to try to find a solution towards permanently affordable housing, and we're well on our way there with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but there can be no permanently affordable housing without also permanently affordable water for the people who are living, who are homeowners and renters. Francis also said about that, leaving no one behind. He spoke, I think, of hope of what we're capable of, calling us architects of our future. And that when we think internationally and locally in our decisions and our work, we can invest in the tomorrow of our planet. Francis said it's necessary to develop financing plans as well as long-range water projects. This firmness will lead to overcoming the vision of turning water into a mere commodity, exclusively regulated by the laws of the market. And we had testimony here tonight about how looking at and treating water as a commodity and imposing market values on where there should be moral values has created tremendous harm to the people and to now a number of generations of Baltimore residents. So now's the time to ensure that no one gets left behind in the pursuit of truly affordable water for all. So thank you for listening to this testimony. I would also say that I would urge you to favorably support this legislation, and also I believe that we also can find a creative way to make sure that truly the office of the advocate remains truly independent of the Department of Public Works. I think we've heard a lot of reasons why it needs to be an independent voice of advocacy, transparency, and accountability in a place that has so often lacked all of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. And Kim Trueheart.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm smiling now, but as I get into my testimony, I'll probably break down and cry. I lost my home 2 years ago to a tax sale. Y'all didn't know that, right? And thankfully, I'm still in that home today. The new owner of my home that I worked and paid cash for before I retired from the Navy has been very generous and has given me time to redeem my property back. But let me tell you, what I've had to live through for the last 2 years has not been something that I want anybody else to have to endure. And yeah, I'm admitting this in public, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but it is not an experience that anybody should have to go through because of water, okay? We can do better as a city. We talk about money to help those less fortunate, and we get into these squabbles about where the money's coming from. The water and wastewater utility is an enterprise fund that should be self-sustaining. So none of this money we're talking about here should be coming directly from the taxpayer. The ratepayer, yes, not the taxpayer. The way we manage the enterprise fund is through legislation. You guys enacted a water and wastewater enterprise fund, and you said what it could and what it couldn't do. And over time, everything needs to change. You now have an opportunity to change the conditions that that enterprise fund operates under. If we have reservations about the director of DPW doing what we need him or her to do, legislate it. Put it in the ordinance that established the enterprise fund. There was a young lady that got up here a minute ago, and she talked about how Director Chow has gotten national recognition. He only gets that because he pays memberships in the national organizations, right? And those members of that national organization get parsed out awards. So every 5 years, the city at this level will get recognized as a member of that organization, not because he's done an outstanding job, not because he served the needs of the residents in a stellar or exceptional way. He paid his dues, okay? And oh, by the way, that comes out of our money. Water is a human necessity. We need to act like it. We need to recognize that predatory practices and laws in this city need to end, okay? There was a time when the lien holder, after a tax sale, could charge 22%. Then it went down to 18%. I think now it's 12%. Reduce that. I take 5% return on my dollar anytime. I can't get that at a bank. But you telling me you're going to favor these predators, right, such that they can still get outrageous returns on their investment? Ain't nobody giving them 12%. You tell me which bank they can get 12% at. That's too much, way too much, and you know it. And 5% ought to be enough. I don't know about this H2O thing, so I'm thankful that you're going to have work sessions where we can sit down and we can have honest dialogue, okay? The independence You know, I asked our new mayor to set up an ombudsman office for children and families that would earnestly address the issues that we have in the city. You can't brush them under the rug. Can't keep doing that. You know, there is an election coming up, and, you know, I hate to say it, but it's about time y'all started looking out for the people. And I hope you recognize that's important. That's your job. You know, I have this conversation with the city solicitor about harm that's been caused to the citizens of Baltimore, not just by outsiders, but harm by our own friggin' government. And that he ought to be suing DPW on our behalf because they have harmed us. Okay. He ought to be suing the police department because they've harmed us. Right. He doesn't get it, but that's okay. I'm going to continue to yell at him. You guys need to start thinking about us in deep and mean. I'm going to be fine, okay? I didn't raise this issue because I want your sympathy or anything. I raised this issue because I know how to fight for myself, and I'm going to win, okay? My battle. But there are so many people in this city who can't fight for themselves, and the expectation is that's what you're going to do for them. Get off your butts and do something for the people who need it, who are hurting. You can legislate this. Don't sit back and let these people tell you what they're going to do and not do, because they have never done the right thing. I don't know how many times I've come up here and talked about water. A zillion times. They have never done the right thing for the citizens of Baltimore. It's like they don't care. You know, last point. The budget director used to sit in this chair right here, okay? Andrew Klein. Andrew Klein and I used to have conversations about investments in this city. And Andrew was down on the sidewalk one break after one of these hearings. And I was saying, do you know our babies have to hear sirens every day? They have to hear gunfire every day. They got to endure, right, this environment that is not healthy at all. And he tells me, I sleep fine every night. And I said, yeah, because you sleep in Montgomery County.
Thank you for your testimony. And on that note, we have been talking for, I think, 3 hours. So I do want to thank you all that have stood out these 3 hours, and we've received so much important testimony. There's so many issues. There's so many different kinds of situations that shows that, you know, our residents, there are a lot of residents suffering from DPW's water problems. There's programs that we must put in place immediately. So on that note, we must continue this dialogue. We're going to set up another work session. We're hoping and demand that the DPW director becomes a part of that. And on that note, we're going to go in recess, and everyone that has been involved in this process will be notified when we will arrange the next work session. So all the advocates, the residents, all of you, thank you for withstanding a very important issue. We needed to hear everyone that, you know, that was involved, so thank you again. Talk to you soon. This meeting is in recess.